Okay, in this video, I'd like to go into some MH370 stuff that I just recently discovered, and the timing of when this was done in 2014 is no coincidence. So I'm going to save this for the end, and I'm going to tell you right at the beginning here that um, it's kind of unnerving. So when I saw this, my jaw just hit the floor, and I couldn't really believe it. So what I'm gonna do here is run through all this stuff that happened here in Rogers City, Michigan, and with me and my concrete pyramids and the Civil Air Patrol, who I found out is commissioned by the Air Force, and that's who's actually tied in with this whole thing. So I didn't understand it all. I didn't even know who the Civil Air Patrol was or what they did until this summer. So it's just unreal. So here we go. These are my concrete pyramids. This is from 2014 when I first set these up. This is I set these up on Armed Services Day, 2014. So what they do is they generate torsion field energy, and torsion field energy is just how it's set up is it's pulling from the earth. The earth contains dielectricity. It's a dielectric, or just like the other dimension of counter space, it's ground. So it's no different, it's the same thing. So it's producing these vortexes, which is chewing up all the clouds that come into the field. But they've only got so much radius and they're only so strong. So when you set one of these up and it starts this vortex of torsion field energy spinning, it's faster than light, and what it does is it starts producing this thing called Cherenkov radiation, which starts turning the clouds blue. So when the clouds get into the field, it starts erasing them, especially the chemtrails. It really just takes those out like nothing. So that's why I set these up. I didn't believe the guy that I saw on YouTube talking about these pyramids, because he had a bunch of small ones, and they're nowhere near these ones. These are just a little under 3 foot. So he was saying all this stuff that they were cloud busters, and I didn't believe him. So I got my degree in concrete technology, so I went ahead and built these in 2014 to see if they did anything, and this guy wasn't joking. So when I set these up, they started having all these effects on the clouds in the area. So they also started attracting a lot of UFOs. And then all this attention started getting drawn to what I was doing. So this is the second set of pyramids that I built. This was shortly after, maybe a year or so later, I built these. And I had the first set in town in Rogers City, Michigan, and then I had this set located about 8 miles away where I'm at here. And eventually I moved both sets here. So what was going on was I had this first set as the control group in town, and then I had these 8 miles away. So I would watch both spots to see what they were doing, and they would both have the same effects on the clouds. So this was my control group, and then this was the other one that I was observing, because that's how the scientific method works. So, and then I had a third set that was smaller, set up at my parents' house. So I had 3 spots where these vortexes are being generated. So okay, this is what they do. when they were spraying chemtrails, they would keep blasting in town here, and my pyramids would just eat them up and make them vanish real quick. So then they were trying to find out where the source was coming from. So they just kept spraying even heavier, and you can see them getting faded out, and where they're starting to go blue from the Chernikov radiation. So they just kept spraying heavier and Xing it all up. Once they seen what was going on, they just kept trying to add more and pinpoint where the source was. Oh yeah, I'd also like to point out that all these power lines here, my pyramids were sitting over here in between all these power lines because they made a square. So I was in the middle of all these power lines because the Charter Communications cable hub sat right over here next to my house where I was renting, and this whole thing was just being amplified because the fiber optic and everything for the cable came in right here. So this spot just had unreal effects to it. So you're just seeing here them chemtrails get smoked out, and then you're seeing here the clouds start to go blue. This is the Chernikov radiation, or the Chernikov effect. It's the same thing that you'll see over nuclear power plants, because it's ionizing everything right here, and you will see the same thing in the MH370 videos. It's just the effect of the field. So when your pyramids start doing this to the clouds, people higher up start taking notice, and that's exactly what happened with this whole thing. They've been watching what I've been doing the whole way, like you wouldn't believe. And I've had numerous occurrences happen with all this stuff. So what happened is this started generating these energies that just kept seemingly increasing, and it started attracting a whole lot of UFOs is what happened. So they couldn't keep them out of the airspace. So fast forward to 2023, this last summer. This is another example of what they were doing here. So you can see from one spot in town, fast forward to 2023, and they're doing the same thing in different locations. So it's what I'm saying, this is all verifiable because I've been documenting this whole thing with pictures and videos, because nobody's gonna believe you when you tell them that your pyramids are doing X, Y, and Z. So they basically turn the clouds into these vortex tornado looking things when the conditions are right. So what happened this summer was on a Friday, I was outside raking topsoil, trying to get my grass planted, and I heard this plane, and it started coming in really low. What it did is, I have the pyramids now set up like one right here and then one over here. This plane that was a double proper came through and just dropped down super low and headed out towards Lake Huron. And I thought, wow, that was unreal. That thing just pulled an incredible reading if it wanted to get a baseline reading on what's going on in this area here. So when I woke up and went to town on Saturday, that double prop aircraft was sitting on the tarmac at Rogers City Airport, along with all these other little small single engine aircraft. And I thought, oh boy, I can't believe what's going on here. So basically what happened was, later on in the day when I came back out, they brought all these aircraft out here and they just started swarming my spot here, and they proceeded to stay here for a good part of the day, and um, they stayed in Rogers City area for around a week, in which they continued to map all the torsion field spots that I had set up with these concrete pyramids. So this is what I'm talking about. Here's from the Prescott Advance, our local paper here in Rogers City, Michigan. The Civil Air Patrol invades Prescott County Airport over the weekend. And that's exactly what they did. They invaded the airspace like crazy. I couldn't believe it. They pulled so many readings, and what they were doing, like I said, the whole thing with the military is they always have a story, then they have a cover story. The story is what they're really doing, and the cover story is what they tell the public. So they use the Air Patrol, Civil Air Patrol, that's commissioned by the Air Force to do certain tasks. So basically, what I figured out is they use the Civil Air Patrol like to do the Air Force's dirty work, and that's exactly what they did in this case here. So this is all gonna tie into MH370, and you're not gonna believe the outcome here. So they brought these cadets in, and their cover story was that they were training them to fly. So they apparently don't care too much about their people, because they were flying them through some pretty highly energetic field, shall we say. So they ain't too bright, but they really don't care, as you will see, because they basically put all this stuff right out there, like they don't care. So you can see the article here, and they brought, they say, 8 aircraft for all these training flights. They said there was 84 to 100 cadets involved with this whole thing, and they give their whole cover story. But the interesting thing is that people were telling me that when these flights were landing, they were pulling black boxes off of these things and transporting them somewhere right away. So I immediately knew what they were doing. They had flight data recorders on all these flights, and they were mapping out and recording anything that you could think of, and taking them off the aircraft to be processed somewhere with all the data. So that's what they were doing. And people in Rogers City probably, most of them had no clue, besides the ones that I told what was going on. And that's what they were doing. They're mapping my torsion field. So they always, the Civil Air Patrol, it's this whole deal. Their initials are CAP because it's a bunch of cap, or it's just bogus or baloney. So here's the deal with CAP. CAP is the Civil Air Patrol, and they were formed a day after Pearl Harbor, December 8th, 1941. Okay, Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. And it always seems that these guys are right there after a disaster. And when you look at these initials further, CAP, cap point, or a cap station, this is the lingo that you heard when the whole Tic Tac thing came up with the UFOs. So this whole thing is all tied in. It's like I said, they got a story, and then they got a cover story. So this spokesman that's talking here, he's from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is the other huge tie-in because this is where I found the Holy Grail thing, kind of that I was searching for with this deal. So, to continue, like I said, I had no idea who the Civil Air Patrol even was until they showed up in Rogers City, or else I would have never even found out any of this. Civil Air Patrol, U.S. Air Force Auxiliary. When I found out that that's who it was here, that the Civil Air Patrol's planes were sitting on the tarmac at Rogers City, I immediately started checking into who they were, and when I found out that they were commissioned by the Air Force, everything started to kind of really make sense. So you can see the CAP, or the Civil Air Patrol, their headquarters are out of Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. So here's just a run through their history. And it shows how they were formed. Look at these numbers here real quick. Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order number 9339 on April 29th, 1943. So those numbers are interesting, but it's also interesting because April 43 is right before the Philadelphia experiment supposedly took place in August or right in that time frame of 1943. So this was all right before that. So here's more stuff on CAP. This is when he's signing this thing, and just look at the look on these people's faces. They know what they're doing with all this stuff. So this whole deal with CAP, gets interesting right here because they say that they're doing radiological monitoring and nuclear fallout and participated in Operation Moonwatch by optically tracking artificial satellites. The 1973 law making emergency locator transmitters mandatory in aircraft vastly expanded CAP's search and rescue capabilities. In 1975, for the first time, a civilian volunteer became CAP's national commander, signaling a shift in the CAP Air Force relationship. It's all a bunch of CAP. In 1975, that was the year that the Edmund Fitzgerald sank. And if you watch my last video where I go into stuff on MH370 and Quanta, that's when all the Inmarsat stuff ramped up, was right after the Fitzgerald sank, because it's all tied into this whole maritime admiralty thing. So then they go into this thing, 1979, the year I was born. CAP began flying military training route surveys for the Strategic Air Command and Tactical Air Command. Okay, look at this. Look at the abbreviation on this. Tactical Air Command would be TAC, like tic-tac. So this is all tying in. A 1985 agreement with the U.S. Customs Services saw CAP conducting counter drug reconnaissance missions for law enforcement. Because, like I said, it's all a bunch of CAP. And you know that they're just up to all kinds of stuff. CAP once again began delivering parts for the Air Force and flew human tissue and organ transplant missions with the American Red Cross. So there, big red flag right there. And they also work with FEMA and all this other stuff. That's cap. Okay, so here is where they're showing their whole hand. New millennium, okay, 2001 to now. That's a picture out of one of their aircraft on that day after the 10th of September in the year that you see there, 2001. Very interesting. So, like I said, CAP was formed the day after Pearl Harbor. Okay, now watch this. Okay, so what happened in that day in '01 ushered CAP into a new era of homeland defense. The following day, a CAP Cessna 172, the only non-military aircraft allowed in the nation's airspace, provided emergency management officials with the first high-resolution images of WTC site. Okay, look at these numbers here. A CAP Cessna 172. Add those numbers up. What do you get? You get 10. Add numbers up to MH370. What do you get? You get 10. Or when you reduce it, you get 1. It's just like it says. The one, the only. Okay? All this stuff is right there. So let's continue. With increased federal funding and creation of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, CAP received new technologies for its emergency services, including hyperspectral imaging, improved airborne communications, forward-looking infrared systems or FLIR, GPS-equipped glass cockpit avionics, and geospatial information interceptability. Okay, so interoperability. CAP air crews train alongside government officials and military personnel in aircraft intercept missions, communication exercises, and cybersecurity, and even simulate unmanned aircraft to provide imagery, training support for deployed forces. So that's a lot of stuff that these people cover, and that's why they showed up here, the Civil Air Patrol, because it's a whole bunch of CAP. They're doing stuff for the Air Force. You're gonna see what I'm talking about when we get into Bashago here and his dealings with Curtis Wright. So Bashago is a great American hero and patriot. He's really top notch in my book, and he put it all out there, and he literally put it on the line. He's the whistleblower from Project Pegasus. That was a DARPA project from the the late 60s to the early 70s was when he was in it when he was a kid. And then he was later in the CIA Mars Jump Room program, as he states. But he's not joking, because Andrew Bashago, who was putting all this Tesla teleportation stuff out there and exposing all this stuff of what he was involved with, actually made an affidavit before he started doing his truth campaign when he was running for president. So what you're gonna see here is some pretty serious stuff. So if you think Andrew Bashago would do this whole affidavit and be lying about it, he's not, because the government could just as easily come after him for anything that he's stating here that they don't agree with. But it's the same reason that they won't go after and say anything about the MH370 stuff. It's the same exact reason. So what you're seeing is what Bashago put right out in the public, and all his information is right there. So he's the ultimate stand-up truther for real. So here's what it says in this whole deal with regards to Curtis Wright and this Tesla teleporter, among the other ways that they were doing all this stuff. So here's just an article. It says they're talking about first began traveling to the state capitol grounds in Santa Fe, New Mexico via the Tesla teleporter at the Curtis Wright Aeronautical Company in Woodridge, New Jersey, and returning to New Jersey via the teleport located at Sandia National Labs in Sandia, New Mexico, adjacent to Kirkland Air Force Base, northeast of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay, and then they go into the chronovisor and plasma confinement chamber, and then, of course, the jump rooms and stuff. So, this is when I locked onto this whole thing with Curtis Wright just recently, because I knew that there was something major to it with MH370, and I found it. Because the government put it right out there. And they weren't planning on anybody leaking anything to YouTube, such as the MH370 videos that you see with the orbs and the plane disappearing. So that's why they went so hard against Edward Sealand. If he was the guy that leaked those videos, I'm going to show you why that they went extra hard against him. So Curtis Wright Corporation is a manufacturer and service provider in Davison, North Carolina. It was created in 1929, and the company was immediately the country's largest aviation firm, where they built more than 142,000 aircraft engines for the United States military during World War II. So Bashago tells us all this stuff with the Project Pegasus, and it just ties in super good to everything. So you can look up all his stuff with this affidavit. It's on the internet, and it's unreal. So to understand this, we need to look at how Bashago got into this whole thing, because Bashago, his father, Andrew Bashago's father, his name was Raymond Bashago, and he worked as an engineer for the Ralph M. Parsons Company, who worked on aerospace projects. Ralph Monroe Parsons was an American engineer and businessman. He founded the Parsons Corporation. He enlisted in the Navy, specializing in oil refinery engineering during World War II. He formed a partnership with Stephen Bechtel, who's another key player in this whole thing, and John A. McCone, later head of the CIA. In 1944, he founded the Ralph M. Parsons Company. The company managed the construction of petroleum refineries, chemical plants, mines, metallurgical facilities, and nuclear plants. So this is where this whole thing comes in, with Bashago talking about the Tesla teleporter that was located at Curtis Wright Aeronautical Company facility in Woodridge, New Jersey, building number 68 to be specific, because this guy ain't lying or joking. So the next logical thing I did was I did a Yahoo search on Curtis Wright Aeronautics and New Jersey, and what I found, I literally hit gold. So they put it all out there. Curtis Wright formed July 5th, 1929, merger of companies founded by Glenn Curtiss, the father of aviation, and the Wright brothers renowned for history's first flights. Those two merged. It's pretty wild. This guy's name is Glenn Curtiss because I have a friend named Glenn Curtiss, and I went to high school with him, and he was actually in my college physics class. So um, then they go into this whole thing. Curtiss Airplane and Curtiss Motor Company, Buffalo, New York, and Wright Aeronautical of Dayton, Ohio. That's what merged. So this is how you get the Wright brothers and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base into this whole thing. So this is really interesting too. In 2002, Curtiss Wright acquired Penny and Guides, a supplier of black boxes and sensing devices, hybrid linear, and hybrid rotary, VRV test sensors. In 2003, they moved back to Dayton, Ohio. So you're seeing all this stuff just tie in. So the next thing I did was right here. Curtiss Wright and this thing with New Jersey. So when I got into this, this is what actually came up, and it's unreal. Okay, so if you do the Curtiss Wright New Jersey search and you scroll down, this is what you're gonna get. And when you start going through this, this is when you're gonna see stuff get really real. This is the deal with Curtiss Wright. They're showing you their whole empire here and what they're trying to do. So this is in the 40s. And then they show you the wow factor here with this. I couldn't believe this when I saw this. So let's get into this whole thing. This was from 2014, and Obama is the one that this was under, and the timing of this is unreal. So what you're seeing here, and we're gonna get in more detail with this, it's a metal, it's gold, and it's dealing with the Civil Air Patrol. So they put themselves on top. What you're seeing here is the whole deal, what I'm talking about with the Philadelphia experiment and the Edmund Fitzgerald and MH370 and the clouds and my torsion fields and all this stuff. So you're seeing a sailor that would be representative of the whole United States thing with the USS Eldridge supposedly, and them trying to make a warship disappear in 1943. You look at the dates, 1941 to 45. And then you look at when these things were issued. So this whole thing is really wild because they got a ship here. This could be also significant of the Inmarsat and the disappearance of the Edmund Fitzgerald in 1975. Then you got this lady here who's looking like Amelia Earhart, whose plane went missing and they did a big search for it. And then you're seeing the whole search with the MH370. So it's all out there. But when you look to the flip side of this thing is when your jaw's gonna drop, like mine did. So what you see here is pretty unreal. So you're seeing the whole thing. You're seeing the cover story, and then you're seeing this real story here. And they're showing you right on the bottom, Act of Congress 2014. When you break this one down and look at it, um, you'll see the bottom looks like what they say the Holy Grail looks like, or um, the Ark of the Covenant with the swept back wings that was made out of gold. Okay, so this is the whole deal. You're seeing this wreath like a peace symbol, and then you're seeing the actual peace symbol like in a Mercedes-Benz sign, which they're showing you the three. They're showing you the orb. They're showing you the triangle, and they're showing you who's boss, the U.S. So they say honor civilian volunteers who flew armed and humanitarian missions. So it's quite telling. And then you're seeing these winged shoes or sandals. That's like with the goddess Athena. And this whole thing with Nike and victory. Because it's all part of this deal. So, like I said, they're showing you the orb and the triangle, and that's what it is. They're showing you plane, no plane scenario. But that's not the whole thing. What I'm going to show you here is just unreal. So when you get more detail into this whole thing, you can see what I'm talking about. They put their mark right on the plane, just like they did with MH370. You see that triangle with the orb, a circle around it? That's what I'm talking about. It's just unreal. Just unreal. So, it's right there in the open. I would have never caught this if I didn't go back to Andrew Basiago and how he always wanted to put Tesla stuff out there, and he was so grateful to Nikola Tesla, and I'm trying to do the same stuff with all my stuff. So watch this. This is unreal. On May 30th, 2014, President Barack Obama signed legislation into law awarding the Congressional Gold Medal to approximately 200,000 World War II members of CAP. The medal is the country's highest expression of appreciation for distinguished achievements and contributions. Okay, and then the medal commemorates the organization's unusual contributions in World War II. And you ain't gonna believe what I'm gonna show you here. Because the whole deal with Obama and what Andrew Basiago says, how Obama was in the jump room program going to Mars with the CIA and this whole thing. So he says Obama his real name is Barry Soetoro, and look at what happened in 2016 after the whole MH370 thing was gone through. In 2016, Obama gave away the internet, ending direct U.S. government oversight and control of administration. What he did was this thing here. It's called IANA and ICANN. IANA or ICANN. The Internet Assigned Names, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, and then ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. And then this whole thing gets into the other deal with the Mars jump room thing. This is where Basiago stated that the other jump room was in the Hughes Aircraft Building at 999 North Sepulveda Boulevard, El Segundo, California, and it's called an ARC, Aeronautical Repositioning Chamber. Okay, so now look at this. This is the final thing I'm going to show you in this whole deal. This is when your jaw's about to hit the floor, so hold on. This is the hypertext on that page. I could not believe it when I went back and looked at it. Run the numbers backwards that you see in that hypertext. 370, as in MH370. The military always has a story and a cover story. I rest my case.